Okay, let's get started with jumping back into CucumberJS. So last time, let's pull up my little shell here. Hey, they actually left a message. That's a first. Yeah, we're running into this issue of expected element footer to be visible within the viewport, expected false to equal true. That was the last video that we ran through. And if we pull up the test itself, we can see that we have two main tests in our feature. One, that the element main nav is visible and that the footer is not visible within the viewport. And then the other, that main nav is not visible and that the element footer is visible when you scroll to the bottom of the page. So kind of a dumb test, but it works. Or rather, it doesn't work, and we want to figure out why it's not working. So I was trying to think of how I would debug this, seeing as it's a Cucumber test, and you're not really sure. I'm not really sure where it failed, and so I've got my commands here. Posting execute. What I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the log level to verbose, and that's going to tell me everything that goes on in my tests. So with that, we're going to let the test run. And we can see all the commands and all the actions that are being taken. And then we can see the execute is what's being used to find out whether the element is within the viewport or not. So here's a result of false, and we expected that to be true, I believe. Here's another result, true, false. So it looks like one is coming back as a single string, and another is coming back as an array. And I bet that's having an issue here. I wonder if there are multiple footers on this page. Let's take a look. So we're testing the WebdriverIO website. And let's see. What are we? So we're scrolling to the bottom here. So this is after we scroll to the bottom. And then when I look at the bottom, let's see, we've got 4 assertions in here. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Why? I wonder if each step of these is its own, almost like its own test. So it's the last test that's failing. So if we have 7 dots here, each one represents a line in my code. And if I go back up, like here's the function that it's running. So I wonder if that's how that correlates over. Who knows? And so my thought was that we've got an extra footer on the page, but expect is not visible within the viewport. So what's the element is not visible within the viewport. So we are expecting blank to not equal true versus expect that to equal true. So I think what's happening is the first one is passing, even though it's not coming back as a single string. Yeah, that's an issue. Let me double check. Okay. I've got a loose connection on my mic and it causes issues. But anyway, so in the first test, the element footer is not visible within the viewport. And so when this is visible within viewport comes back, it's actually coming back as an array here. And it's we're doing an assertion that we expect is visible to not equal true. And I think what we should do instead is a little bit different. And instead of asserting that it's not true, we should assert that it's false. Expect is visible to equal false. And I imagine if we do this instead, we're going to get that failure a little bit earlier. So I'll go back to there and run my test. Actually, I'm going to turn off log level verbose, and I'm actually going to turn it to silent. Oops, npm test log level equals silent. And that's going to allow us just to see the dots that are coming across. We may turn that log level back up if we want to in a little bit. Okay, so no, it looks like that didn't change it. Expected false to equal true. Okay, so that idea went out the window, but I still do like using this expect is visible to equal false versus expecting it to not equal true, because you know, it could be some sort of object or something else that comes through, and that's I'd rather assert that it is something than that it isn't something. So that's what we're doing there. Now we're expecting footer to be visible within the viewport. We got a false and we're expected it to be true, so that's coming in through here. Browser is visible within viewport. So let's jump back over to the WebdriverIO page and inspect it, and let's see what we have for our footer. So if we scroll to the bottom of the page and then take a look, there's the footer right here. It has a class of container, and inside of it has a couple things. I'm just wondering if there's any footer. So I'm going to do a search by doing footer. So there's one footer there. No, there's only one footer on this page. So why would that not work? Homepage 6. I wonder if 6 is like the step you're on. Although that doesn't make too much sense. Yeah, I don't know what's going on there. The element footer is visible within viewport. The element footer is visible. Okay, so this matches up here. And so that's how you can kind of know which one it is. Oh, actually, yeah. Expected element blank to be visible. Expected element footer to be visible in the viewport. Expected false to equal true. So if you come back, the element main nav is not visible. The element footer is visible. Let's go ahead, and I'd like to debug at this point and see what's going on. So I'm going to go into my step right here, and then I'm just going to call a browser.debug. And let's try that out. I've never tried this out. I'm going to increase my timeout to, I'm going to check, no, not my Mocha ops timeout, because we're not in Mocha. We are inside of Cucumber. So there's a timeout here. So I need to pass that to my CucumberOps.timeout. Since this is an object, we can reference the properties of those objects using the period or the dot, and then we're going to set that equal to just a really high number. And we're going to run that, and this should pause our test and let us debug it right in the middle. And I'll probably run the browser is visible on footer from within the in here. So it should have scrolled down the page, but it didn't. Oh, you know why? Because this paused on our very first one. So if I hit enter or control C, let's see, it's going to run another test. So here's our second test here. And now it's scrolled to the bottom of the page. And then we'll run it one more time. And this is probably the last check that it's going to be making. So at here, I can run this command. So I'll paste that in there, and instead of element, I'm gonna do footer, and that's gonna return false. So it's checking if the element of footer is within the viewport, which is really strange because you can see right here, it is within the viewport. Because if I come here, that element's there. Maybe there's something going on with the box shadow. Let's just remove all of that and try that again. Browser is element within. Nope. Oh, and it like scrolled down like crazy. One more. False. Huh. Let's try, like, let's see if one of these elements is inside the viewport. So what do we have? We have text of need help. So I'll use a text selector. So I'll do h6 equals need help, and let's see what that comes back with. False. but it's like it scrolled me up, which is kind of strange. Let's see if we have a, I'll search for home. Oh, because it's not an H6. I think it's just a link. Maybe it needs to be capital. There we go. Okay, so it is case sensitive at that point. Maybe there's a link down here. There is. There are a couple links. We've got issue, getter, chat. How many issues are on the page? Okay, so there's only one issue on the page, and that is a link. So let's try searching for that. Issue. That's false as well. Element visible within viewport. Why would that be false if it is? What if I try like switch tab? That is a, what is that? Okay, so that is a single link, so I can search using the link text selector. Let's see. Switch tab. False. Again. Well, it's like it jumped up. Why is it jumping up when I do that sometimes? So that should have come back as true. It's with invisible. Let's try this home again, because this home should equal false at this point because we're scrolled down on the page. Okay, so it does equal false, so that's good. What is visible within the viewport? What if I just do is visible? That's true. How about switch tab? Oops. That's also true. How about footer? I would expect that to be true. It's true. But it's not visible within the viewport. I wish I could like, well, you know, I could pass in HTML. That's true. How about body? That's false. So it can't even, it doesn't even think the body is within the viewport. What about like a container? Let's see. What do we have? A search bar. We have a container. Content. Content should be visible within the viewport. So I'll search for a class of content, and that's false. Notice how it's like scrolling back to the top, or like halfway through the middle. I'm gonna jump back into my test and see what we're doing here. When I look at the bottom we scroll to the footer. I wonder where this footer location is. So there is a, I think there's like a get location we can use. Get location determines an element's location on the page. So let's try getting the location of the footer. So I'm just still in debug mode. Even though I changed pages, I'm still in debug mode. So 4701 is my location. And then if I inspect, I can do a document.scroll height. And I'm actually going to do that again, get my location again. No, it stays the same. Oh, how funny. When I do get location, the reason why it's jumping back up, finally figured that out, is because I have my console open and it wants to shut it. So I think I'm going to undock my console. That way it's not interfering with the page itself. So I'll scroll back down, and then if I run this again, oh, it still does knock that console out. Huh, that must be like a debug thing that it does. Okay, well, I was hoping to get the location of the, or how far down we're scrolled. I can do that. I can do that through here though. I can do document.scroll height. I think it has to be body. Okay, 4,953. So that's saying how far down it's scrolled, and this is saying that my footer is 4,701. What does let's take a look and see what is visible within viewport does. So I'll go to there, go to the source, and it looks like it was running some sort of execute command. We do a selector execute, and then we pass in is visible within viewport function, which is pulled in from the scripts directory. And to get to there, go to scripts. Oh man, I wish like GitHub you could command or click or alt click or whatever click that is to get to that file. That'd be neat if it was smart enough for that, but we can go through the dumb way. Jump into here, and we need is within viewport. And let's see what that does. That doesn't require any other files, so that's nice. We get the document element. We basically add a couple things together. So is within viewport. I think this is recursive. Let's see. Is within viewport is a function. Takes in elements, so it's checking these elements to see if that's the case. It's going to loop through. It's going to get the element. It's going to say, is it visible within the viewport? So this is basically a marker. So if this ever gets set to false, it's going to completely break out of the loop. And it's a little performance thing so you don't have to go all the way down if you aren't. If you've already failed the test, it's going to just say, no, it's not there. So it checks that the display is not equal to none and that the visibility is equal to visible. Then it sees if opacity is greater than 0. And then if bottom is greater than 0, right is greater than 0, top is less than the viewport dimension height, and left is less than the viewport dimension height. So what's element dimension come from? That comes from get bounding client rectangle, and I think this is a DOM method. So if I jump back in here and run $0, I need to jump over to my elements, and then inside of here I can get a console. If I press escape, then it brings up a console. I can select the element I want and then use the $sign to reference that. You see how it says equals $0. And then I can run this DOM function. So client rectangle, there's that top number that we were looking at. And with that, we get the viewport dimension height. So we check that the top is less than the viewport dimension height. Let's see, what's the viewport dimension height? That is the client height. So the client height is equal to document.documentElement.clientHeight. Client height. Nope. Autocomplete. The client height is equal to 536. So that viewport dimension. So the top isn't less than 536, but I feel like that's not the only thing here. While the parent node and the parent node get bounding rectangle. Element is equal to element parent node. So I feel like this shoots up the DOM structure until it gets to the top. Let's see, is this body visible? Yeah, the body is visible. What does that return? Because I think we tried that body. So that did return true. What if I scroll to the bottom? False. There. Huh. So that's interesting. It looks like it's an issue with scrolling through the page. Having some trouble there. So that's really interesting. I wonder if is visible within viewport has a bug in it. Let's look at the issues and search for is visible within viewport. So here they scroll, and it's also having the same issue. Wait for visible might not work. I would just use is visible. Yeah, so I feel like this script here isn't quite working correctly. I wonder if maybe that should be a greater than. Because the viewport dimension height isn't coming back what we would think it would be. Because we're getting the height of the viewport, but we're not getting how far down we're scrolled. So you would probably want to add in here your scroll height, which again, if I bring back up the console, we can get through document.body.scroll height. Oh, scroll height. There, that's how far I'm scrolled down. So if I scroll down a little bit more, oh, no, that's not how far down I'm scrolled. That is how tall the page is. What if I did $0 scroll height 4390, 4953. Oh, that's because I wasn't focused on the footer. Or sorry, yeah, I wasn't focused on the footer. What if I do that? So it's still that. Why does that say 247? Oh, that's how tall it is. So yeah, I guess scroll height is how tall the element is at that point. Scroll offset, I think, might be what I'm looking. Offset. Oh, scroll offset is not something. What do we have? Scroll top. Scroll height and scroll top is 0. And that's for here. So it doesn't have a scroll bar. So if I hit select the body again, now the hope is that I come back to here and I scroll up and this number is different. Yeah, so if I go all the way up to the top of the page and hit scroll top, it's going to be 0. So I feel like what we need to do is take the scroll top into account here and say the height is equal to the client height plus the scroll top. And the same thing goes with the client width plus the width. And then this viewport dimension height would be correct. Or we could take the top and subtract out how far down we are scrolled on the page. That is another option. I want to jump into their test and see if they have a test for this. So this is getting kind of off the track of CucumberJS, but I am just curious. So they've got a bunch of tests in here. They do have, let's see, wait until miscellaneous element. That's under miscellaneous. No, not that. I'll just search for is visible within viewport. Okay, so I do have a test here on there. And looks like it's skipping 2 of them. Those might be failing. Not within. I wonder if it has anything to do, like if I scroll anywhere on this page, not in viewports. Should check that an element is inside the viewport when it is. So we scroll down and then we check. And then is visible within viewport, not in viewports. Should check that an element is inside the viewport when it is. We scroll to not in viewports, then we check if not in viewports is visible. Should be. I'd have to see what not in viewports is. I guess, Wonder how this test is running. So this might be something to talk about in a later, in a future WebdriverIO Wednesday. But for today, I'm going to table it. Paste that in there. And I'm going to end this session here. So now you can see that it still fails. So it looks like there might be a bug with the is visible within viewport command. If you are scrolled down on the page, it may not take that into consideration. before before running its test. So anyway, that's browser.debug, which I do have a whole video on if you are interested in more information on that. But that's a really good way to debug your test. You could probably write a then I want to debug my test and create your own this.then function. And then in here we would say I want to debug my test. I don't really care about any of this. And do browser.debug. And let's try this out real quick and see if this works. So I want to debug my test. That would do that. You could also just say debug if you wanted to make it a little bit shorter, then debug. You know, that's probably what I would do, because if you're debugging your test, then it's not going to be in the production code or in your main code. It's just a short time fix. So let's run this and see how this works. See if I can get this to run. I did save all my files. Yes, I did. Then debug. So it should go through the first 4 or 5, yeah, and then it ran to the debug, and it's paused now at this point. So that's another nice way to debug at that point, is you just create your own little method called then debug. And then in there, you just debug, and then when you're done, you hit Control-C, and it moves on through the debug step. Man, it'd be nice if you could do that with this dot timeout. So this dot timeout is a way to set the timeout on a test. So I want to see if I could set the timeout on my test, increase that in my debug, so that I don't have to manually add that timeout when I do want to do a debug. Basically making it easier to debug my tests no matter what, or yeah, whenever I need to. This dot timeout is not a function. What could that be? Browser.debug? Let me see. Not debug. Timeout. WebDriver, Selenium, framework related timeouts. So this is for Mocha. In Cucumber, I want to increase the timeout. Wait for timeout. Framework related. For Jasmine, and for Cucumber, you set Cucumber. So this is what we were doing. Timeout. Set timeout. No, we didn't want to do that. Browser timeouts. Page load. Oh, session. So there is a browser timeouts function. Is that documented? Timeouts implicit. Timeouts page load. Oh, let's jump over to the Cucumber docs. That's what we can do. And search for timeout. Slow handler. Set default. Define support code. Set default timeout to 500. That might work. Let's try that. So this is going to set it to 60 seconds before it times out. So this .timeout is a Mocha thing. And despite this code looking like Mocha, it is Cucumber. I kept thinking that this was Mocha for some reason, but I believe it's a completely different thing. So let's try this out, and then we'll call it a day at that point. Run our test and set default timeout. It's not defined. That's probably because this is inside of the WebdriverIO script. So this is thinking it's a WebdriverIO script. Define support code. Set default timeout. Well, step definitions, options.timeout. We would have to actually jump into the framework for Cucumber. Whole list of options, there's boilerplate, config file. Yeah, we'd have to jump into here, see how they handle all that stuff. I think I'm going to skip over this because that's pretty in the weeds of what's going on. So we've got our adapter, it's probably in here. And what was the thing, this dot then? That's inside this dot given. Wonder if they overwrite that result promise. Wrap a step in synchronous code. Yeah, it looks like that. So they take the code, wrap it in WebdriverIO sync, retry a test. Default timeout, default options, timeout for step definitions. Set default timeout. So this is what they're using here, CucumberOps.timeout. So Cucumber ops, it's probably getting overwritten somewhere. Get step definition. Yeah, I don't think you can easily override it. The only thing that I could try is to set the timeouts here, but I don't know what that would be. Really don't know what that would be. So I am going to page load keyword is part of, but not my supported. Previous name is page load browser.timeouts. Yeah, you would have to do a browser.timeouts. We'd have to see where browser.timeouts is defined. And that would be in the WebdriverIO code. I keep wanting to just say, screw it, I'm calling it a day, but I'm also very curious to know this stuff. So if I jump into the library and then I'm gonna just search up for timeouts, which is gonna be a function somewhere. See that, okay. I'm losing hope on this one because it doesn't look like this is related to this .client.timeouts script. It doesn't look like it's related to the framework that we're running inside of. Timeouts, change log. Yeah, I think the only thing that you're going to do if you're going to have to debug inside of here is you're going to just pass it in through here, CucumberOps.timeout. I really don't think trying to set the timeouts is going to do anything. I guess I could look at this function real quick and see what it does. So it just, yeah, it sends a request to the Selenium session. So all of these timeouts have to do with Selenium itself, which is completely outside of Cucumber. So Selenium doesn't know that you're running Cucumber, and that's that. So before I sign off, any questions on the chat room? I noticed a few people joined, so thank you for joining. I appreciate you tagging along. I'm just looking at CucumberJS and how it ties into WebdriverIO. If you haven't noticed, or if you didn't know, I've been going through CucumberJS the past few times. The first one, 2 times ago, I took a look at Cucumber boilerplate, and that's up on YouTube if you want to watch it there. And then last time, I took a look at writing our own test using the features here, writing a feature, writing some steps if we want to try that out. A lot of this stuff is already inside of the Cucumber boilerplate. It matches up here. We've got our steps and our features. So that's pretty cool. This would be a really good starting place if you do want to try. Oh, you know what? I do have one more thing I'll take a look at is Chimp.js, because this is a WebdriverIO based tool that integrates pretty well with Cucumber. They've got a pretty good integration there. It looks like they might have some sort of error on their page, or I just had increased the text large enough that it did a breakpoint. I like how I blamed them before blaming myself, but maybe next time I'll take a look at Chimp and get that running, because I like to recommend Chimp for anybody who is asking about CucumberJS. But, oh, they have a whole book. Nice. On it. Neat. And where's that at? That's on Zolve. That's cool. Anyway, yeah, I think I'll try this out next time. Thanks for tagging along, and I will upload this to YouTube soon, and I will see y'all next week. Have a great one.